again is to make sure, first and foremost, first, second, and third actually is we want to try to get the small business community to be aware of all the tools that are available to help them survive. That's number one. Number two, number three. Two other topics today will be about what to do, what options might be available to you if your business doesn't survive or the business you work for doesn't survive. And Pat's going to talk about cybersecurity because we're all working from home, and I don't think anybody, all these protocols were put into action so quickly. I'm not sure we all paid enough attention to security. I think Zoom has fallen into that trap. But with that, I want to ask Tom to go first because I know he's recently heard some new information. And a lot of this is going to be based on, I think everybody kind of knows where we're going with the SBA, but I think what we want to talk about is expectations once you apply through the SBA.
Yeah, can I just ask you, are you recording this? Because I think it's helpful for people. Are we recording?
Yes, all the sessions are recorded in the chat. Please send contact information. I have a OneDrive folder where we'll store all of these sessions moving forward so you can access them at any time.
Thank you, Roscoe.
No problem.
So I hear that I am not just here for my good looks, but you want me to present. There we go. And there are my good looks. Okay. I haven't aged at all since that picture was taken, right? So that picture is from 2011, but it's what I had available. And so a number of us were on the line last week, and a number of us are new. So for those of you who don't know me, or I don't know, I'll just give you a really quick introduction to me and what I do. My name is Tom Murdoch. I work at the University of Buffalo in an economic development role. Specifically, what I do is I work with companies in 11 different incubators across Western New York, business incubators like Patrickj, that have an MOU with UB through a program, Whalen, or the Western New York Incubator Network. So that's kind of what I do all day, every day. And UB is a big place with a lot of economic development programs. I'm a part of a team of people that do this every day. Whalen is my program that I look after. So incubator companies, relationships with UB, connections to economic development resources, connections to the university, faculty, facilities, students for internships, all of that. These are our 11 incubators. Patrickj is one of them. Patrickj is our newest member, actually. And so, you know, in the normal course of events, I have been working with companies in different ways to connect them with resources to help them grow, namely to raise money and to hire people, which is the name of the game. And at the end of the year, I approach each of the companies that I help and ask them for a letter that says, this is what we did this year, and that's how we measure our success. And so in a given year, we'll see companies raise something like $20 to $30 million and create 60 new jobs in Western New York. And so that's really exciting. And so things were kind of humming along, and then the coronavirus came. And so my story is kind of consistent with pretty much everybody, right? Life was good, and then coronavirus happened, and now we have this huge wrench in our plans. And when that happened, I just started to do a ton of research on what the programs were that were out there to help keep companies in business. And at the onset, I didn't realize I was going to be doing a lot of work understanding the SBA and how they work. But here I am. And essentially 2 weeks ago, the CARES Act, which was the third big stimulus bill and the biggest of the stimulus bills, a $2.2 trillion stimulus, rolled through Congress and then to the White House. And it initially came out as 812 pages of legislation. So there were a whole bunch of people that tried to make sense of it. And I'm going to run through, and we've got some people who were here last week. We talked about the Paycheck Protection Program, which on a high level is an opportunity for a small business. So small is kind of a funny definition. We define small as anything that has fewer than 500 employees. For those companies, they can count up their monthly payroll and get a grant for 2.5 times their monthly payroll that is forgivable if they don't cut their staff, or if they have already cut their staff and are working to bring them back by June 30th. That's a super high level of that one. I'm going to come back to it. The other big one is called EIDL, or an economic injury disaster loan, which is kind of a souped up version of the disaster loan program that the SBA has on the shelf for typical disasters, right? So a hurricane hits Miami and they can deploy this program. So this is now souped up to apply to companies in disaster zones across the US. All of New York State is a disaster zone, so we're already there. And while the Paycheck Protection Program involves 2.5 times your monthly payroll, the EIDL program is slightly different. That is, you can apply for a loan of up to $2 million. The first $200,000 of that does not require a personal guarantee or collateral. And the first $10,000 of it, and this is where it gets really interesting, is wholly forgivable. And so in theory, EIDL says that there's $10,000 of free money out there for every small business in the US. And then where it gets even more interesting, they say, by the way, that $10,000 will get deployed in 72 hours after you apply, which is crazy and begins to indicate how crazy the times that we're living in are. So if you think about these two programs together, one key difference between them is that Paycheck Protection Program is something that you apply to through your bank, whereas the EIDL loan is something that you apply to directly through the SBA. So that's an important distinction. And if I could, I guess I'll just walk you through some things that we've learned in the past week, knowing that we have a bunch of people who were on the line last week. So what's new about the Paycheck Protection Program? So that went live on Friday, or was supposed to go live on Friday, and it's getting rolled out simultaneously at thousands of banks all over the country. Each bank is on its own to figure out what this means, and there are a lot of them that say, we need additional guidance to be able to do this. There are some of them that are ready to go. There are some of them that are almost ready to go. And some are better at this than others, frankly. The numbers are astronomical. It's $350 billion that was dedicated to this. I know Bank of America saw requests for $36 billion in PPP loans within the first 24 hours that they were open. I know Wells Fargo hit a point where they had so many applications that they had to just stop taking new ones. There's one local bank that got 25,000 applications already. So what we're seeing is each bank is handling this differently. One example of a client that I work with who has been with a big national southern bank with a flag for a logo, and they added their own requirements in here for who would qualify. They said, in addition to an account relationship with us, you need to have a lending relationship with us, and he didn't. So they said, sorry, we can't talk to you about the Paycheck Protection Program. And so he was understandably really upset, right? And we started looking, and what we found was that as alternatives, there were some banks out there that are ready to go but aren't ready to talk to new customers because they're trying to take care of their own at this point, which is understandable. And then there were some others, Evans and Northwest, and probably some others that other people on the call have come up with that are willing to take on new clients. And so in this particular case, Evans won the day, and this entrepreneur moved all of his accounts, not just his PPP, his personal and his business accounts, from that big out-of-state bank to this local one. So it's kind of a fun story. So the big thing that I would say with regard to the Paycheck Protection Program, big thing number one is just definition of the opportunity. 2.5 times your monthly payroll is available as a grant if you don't cut people. Big thing number two is that your bank is judge, jury, and executioner for this. And so you really need to work your relationship with the bank, knowing that there are thousands, millions, maybe, I don't know, of applications coming in around the country in a matter of a couple of days. And that relationship that you have with your bank, if you have someone there who knows your name, knows your face, is going to pick your email out of the thousands that they're getting and walk your application down the hall, that's super key. Then as you think about the EIDL program, remember I said, among other things, that could mean $10,000 in 72 hours. The update this week is that 72 hours has gone by and I don't know any companies yet. I haven't been able to find any, even on Twitter, that are getting checks. And moreover, what we're hearing, we don't have any real official guidance on this, but we're seeing in communications from the US Chamber of Commerce and from certain senators that there are essentially two thoughts here. One is that while they say 72 hours, what they really mean is that they are going to require someone from the SBA to manually reach out to each applicant and verify that information is correct. The 72 hours clock starts, which would essentially mean that we're a month out from the 72 hours. The other thing that we're hearing is that it may not be a straight $10,000 for everybody. It may be, given that we're resource constrained, it may be that we are looking at a situation where you get $1,000 for every employee of your business for your first 10 employees. And so, unfortunately, we've got more questions than answers, and that particularly hurts because this was supposed to be the program that rolled out quickly and deployed cash quickly. So those are kind of some updates on those two, and I can go into great detail with anyone if they need it. But, for anyone who has an existing SBA loan, terms have been relaxed on those, and so you can do that through your banker as well. And then I had some questions. I've had a bunch of questions from a bunch of people this week about unemployment benefits. And so if you think about the way that they work in New York State, there is a formula where the more money you made in the past year, the more benefit you can achieve on unemployment, and that's capped at roughly $400 a week. What's happened through the CARES Act, which is the overarching legislation for everything on this slide, the CARES Act has enabled a federal contribution of $600 to everyone filing for unemployment across the US. So that still happens at the state level. So you go on the state unemployment website, you file, and you qualify for whatever amount up to $400 from the state. And then the federal government, through the state, so you don't go and apply somewhere else, is tacking on $600 onto the amount that you're getting from the state. And so that $600, as best I can tell, is not something that's subject to a formula. It's a straight $600 for all applicants. The other big thing about unemployment is I've yet to talk to someone who has been easily able to navigate through the website and get an application submitted. The volume is astronomical. The volume is horrifying, frankly. And I've been advising people to go on in the middle of the night and try and do it when volume is lower. And some have actually had some success doing that. I'm on the board of an organization called BIANUS, the Business Incubator Association of New York State. We have a program called Innovate to Ventilate, which is helping advanced technologies that are maybe 3/4 of the way there to yield more ventilators, or it can be personal protective equipment. It can be anything in response to the COVID crisis, not just ventilators. And so we're seeing some success there. We're pairing companies with resources to move them along, whether they be financial resources or advocacy resources in Albany. And we're doing a call every Friday from, I believe, 11 to 1 that you folks are welcome to join if you want to see some of the technologies that are moving forward through that. And then also there's the opportunity to, if you think you can pivot what you're doing to be a supplier to New York State, as New York responds to everything going on, they have the specifics of the things that they're looking for available on Empire State Development's website. It's not hard to search through it. Pretty quickly when you go to the EXP site. So that's everything I have for you guys. And I assume there will be questions, but I think we want to follow essentially what we were doing last week, where we'll hold questions until the end, unless I hear differently from Pat or Roscoe.
Yeah, I just want to add to that because we did have questions about, so too much echo here? You hear me okay?
Yeah.
We did have questions about sole proprietors, and we reached out to a couple of people that I think are experts. One's an accountant, one's an attorney. They work together. Basically, they said the number one question they get is who qualifies? And the simple answer is yes, you qualify. Even if you're a sole proprietor, the trick becomes calculating what your 2.5 month salary is. But both these people said stronger than Tom just said it, can't stress strongly enough that the time is of the utmost importance because these programs are going to run out of money. I'm assuming, hoping that there's going to be more money added when they do run out of money, but right now they're not delivering the money as fast as we all had hoped, and it's very clear that they're not going to have enough money. So we were going to kick the can down the road on the sole proprietor question, and we will have more information on that next week. But I wanted to get that out there that yes, you qualify for sole proprietor for both EIDL and the payroll protection program, and that you should apply as quickly as possible. And again, the bank is the place to go to for payroll protection.
A little more color on Paycheck Protection Program. There was another document that came out 2 nights ago, which was 31 pages, which was much more manageable than 812. And essentially, there are a whole bunch of lessons from there. Some are cooked into what I was just sharing. But another thing that I did not mention is clarity. Should a company count its independent contractors that it's paying as part of its payroll? And they're very clear in there and saying, no, independent contractors file on their own. So that further informs some of what Pat was just saying about sole proprietors do qualify, and the expectations that you follow on your own, even if you have a big client that you're doing most of your work for.
All right, thanks, Tom. Well, we'll ask for questions a little later, but I want to make sure that Jeannine and Pat cover their 2 topics, and I'm not sure who wants to go first. I know, Pat, you have some screens to share. Here. Roscoe, you there? Let her share her screen.
Yep, it's already activated.
Okay.
Let's see, slideshow. Oh, there we go. Okay, I gotta move this out of the way. I can't see my own slides. Okay, this is just the title, Cybersecurity Issues and How to Secure Your Company Information with Employees Working from Home. And it's interesting because employees were always a risk anyway of cybersecurity. And after, well, the company I work for is Legal Shield and ID Shield. We have an identity theft plan, which is how I got interested in identity theft after working 25 years in HR. And I became a certified identity theft risk management specialist because it was something that my clients and my companies, I go to companies offered as employee benefit, but I also enroll individuals. In fact, I got 2 calls just now from people saying they want to sign up because they're worried about identity theft and what can happen. And then I got on the board of InfraGard, which is a public-private partnership with the FBI, and I learned a whole lot more about identity theft, what they're doing, or what they're seeing, and what the criminals are doing. And the InfraGard, if anyone's interested in joining it, it's free to join, but they take a look at threats to the United States, our security, our infrastructure. And can you imagine if there was a cybersecurity event now and our power grid was taken down? I mean, just think of the hospitals and everybody working from home and the internet and all that. So things can happen, and it doesn't take much sometimes for someone to get a little bit of information and then make something big happen out of it. So, and countries are constantly trying to get our information, and successfully getting our information, especially China and Russia. I mean, constant. I forgot the number, but they told us one time how many hits on the Pentagon there are every 24 hours. Is just incredible. And this was an article. Employees are the leading cause of data breaches because of things that they have access to. And 55% of the companies surveyed say they already experienced a security incident due to a malicious or negligent employee. And 60% of companies believe their employees are not knowledgeable about the company's security risks. And I do identity theft awareness workshops for business owners and also for employees. And in the business owner one, I asked them, I said, how many here have employees that might be a little disgruntled? Because I have statistics on how many of those employees take company information when they leave. Well, now everybody's working from home. Were any of those employees disgruntled to begin with? And maybe, they've got access to all this information. So this was from an FBI article that I just received. Cyber actors take advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic to exploit increased use of virtual environments. They received since March 30th, which was not many days ago, more than 1,200 complaints related to COVID-19 scams, and they say they're definitely out there exploiting increased use of virtual environments. Teleworking software vulnerabilities, education technology platforms that people's kids are on, new business email compromise schemes. And what do they want? They want our information. And some of this information I took from a privacy policy that I give companies that they can have their employees sign. If these are gonna hack or phish to obtain sensitive information, they're gonna eavesdrop on conference calls. They're doing that already. They were doing that before this. Eavesdrop on virtual meetings. This is a kind of information that's considered proprietary and or confidential. They told us a story one time. Somebody, an engineer from India worked in the United States at a local company. High-tech company. His father was back in India. The son was feeding him information. They created the entire plant that was here in India and producing the same products but cheaper. So they're looking for companies' business methods, customer utilization information, retention information, how do you retain your customers, any type of technique, sales information, marketing strategies, computer codes, information about your current or former or prospective customers, sales associates or suppliers, and the name and identity of any customer or vendor and what the relationship is that you have with them. So it's just very, very, there's a ton of information. It's not just, maybe I shared one little thing. It's a lot of information they're looking for. So what should you and the remote workers do? Well, first of all, whose equipment are they using? Their own or their companies? Sometimes they're maybe using multiple machines at home, and maybe they're getting on their own laptop that's got a bigger, connected TV with, who knows what they're doing. And the IT department at that company communicated with every remote worker regarding the rules of engagement online. It's like Pat said, this happened so fast. It was like, what do they say? Rats scattering off of off a ship. I don't know. People, it's like the building was on fire. Everybody, scramble and they're leaving. So at home, they need to secure the Wi-Fi network. You hear all the time, people don't change the password on the router. It's still the default router. It's better to use a company, virtual private network, which encrypts the information going back and forth. I say turn off Alexa, turn off Google Home when you're talking business, because we all know there's been articles about this. I actually have been cleaning out my identity theft articles. I've thrown out 10 bags so far of articles on identity theft. I probably have 10 more. They talk about these things. Alexa is listening. Google Home, they're listening to people, and they're hacking into these things to listen to what people are talking about with respect to business, especially if they find out, on LinkedIn, anyone can go to LinkedIn, find out who works for Moog, who works for some of these high-tech businesses, who works, starting a business. They can find out who these people are and target them. Obviously, use strong antivirus software and firewalls, and back up your data frequently. And this happened to someone, a very prestigious person. They kept their backup drive connected to their PC. So at the end of the day, they would back up their PC. Well, they kept it connected all the time, 24/7. Well, they got ransomware. Not
that
only
prestigious person was Pat, right?
No. What,
No?
did it happen to you? Not only did their computer get locked up, but the hard drive backup got locked up. Everything got subject to ransomware. And if an employee gets ransomware, what are they going to do? You know, what's the company going to tell them to do? So hopefully they know what their protocols are for backing up their information. And then obviously install updates to security software when they become available. People put it off, put it off, put it off. I said, don't wait, because they're there for a reason. Even though they're 10 miles behind the criminals, the companies are still saying, okay, we found something. Now we have to put something in place in case it hasn't come to you yet. You know, you better install this. Obviously use strong passwords. Unique for every account. I can tell you what people use as passwords. It's unbelievable. You know, long string of upper and lowercase numbers, letters, special characters. People use names. You know, anything you find in a dictionary, a word or a person's name in a millisecond. A password hacker can get into that. So I tell people to even think of a phrase and use the first letter of each phrase. Like I like to go fishing on Lake Erie in July. Just use the first letter of each phrase, capitalize it, a number and a special character. Use two-factor authentication, two-step verification, multi-factor. Some people don't like to bother with this because it's one more step, and now they got to, you know, get a text message or something or an email. But if someone has their information in a data breach, like, you know, Equifax had a huge data breach, and like 80% of the adult population was part of that breach. Well, they're not going to be able to do get into your accounts if you have this two-step verification set up, if they just have some of your, you know, just your regular password. And look out for phishing and scams that are coming by way of email or phishing scams. You know, check the sender's email address for spelling errors, look for poor grammar. All over the place. They're getting better, they're getting smarter, they're not so stupid anymore. They look very real. One of my clients, employees there got an email from their bank. They just copied and pasted the graphics, the criminals did, from the bank's website, and they put it in the email. And the owner of the email, or the owner of the establishment, started filling out this customer service survey, so she'd get $25 put in her bank account. And then somebody else in the office said, wait a minute, maybe we should check this out. So, you know, hover over links to see the URL. Don't click on links or attachments. I just had a lady call me before this, and she said she got a call from somebody pretending that they knew her, asking her for information. And she did give them a little bit of information, but then she realized maybe it was a scam. So think of all the, you know, people have their cell phones with them now, and cell phones are readily available. So they don't have to call them at work. They can call them on their cell phone and get a hold of them. And they might think it's somebody from the company calling and asking for legitimate information when it's not. And that's what these phishing scams are. In Western New York, millions of dollars just in Western New York have been paid to criminals. They target CEOs, CFOs, and HR, and what they're trying to do is get them to, you know, do a wire transfer, send money, do ACH. So the FBI says just in Western New York, even though you think, oh, I know it's not real. I wouldn't be that dumb to click on that or do that or send that money, but it looks like it's coming from somebody of importance. Or, you know, they do it. They have done it. So phishing is if you get a scam voicemail, which I'm sure we've all gotten. Smishing is scam text messages, which we've all gotten. Use encryption when sending proprietary information. So many people don't use any encryption. And lock your device. You know, your phone should have a password on it. Your computer should have a password on it. People are at home. Their kids are walking around, you know, doing things, and they might be able to get innocently send something somewhere or do something that could share the information. And I just threw this in there because, you know, we've been talking about a Zoom or other online meeting programs. You don't want to get Zoom bombed. So you create and use a password for every meeting. And obviously don't share that on social media or another public site. Email it to the participants. And it's actually better to have people register for the meeting in advance, especially if you've got confidential information. I mean, this meeting, it doesn't necessarily matter, but if you're in a company situation, you've got all that information that I had on the previous slides. You don't want competitors to know. You don't want anyone to know, especially not people from another country. You know, set up something that people have to register for the meeting. So only the people who are registered will be able to get the logins and the passwords, and also have a secondary person as an administrator for the meeting in case something does happen and it needs to be addressed while the presentation is running. They can stop it, they can block somebody, they can take care of it, so the other person doesn't have to stop what they're doing and get redirected. And if you're screen sharing on an iPad type device, if you use the on-screen keyboard and put in your passwords or something like that, the people are going to be able to see that as well. So don't do that. And I say, don't forget about paper. Make sure your employees are securing the company information that they took home. Lots of people gathered up a bunch of stuff, or they went back and they grabbed a bunch of stuff, they took it home. Secure anything they're printing at home. Set up a dedicated workspace away from the rest of the family. There was a situation one time where this woman worked at a credit union and she took some work home. She had it on a coffee table. Well, we're supposed to be social distancing. No one's supposed to be going into anybody's home, but I've heard stories from people saying their teenagers are lonely, so they're letting them come over and play with their kids. Well, in this particular case, this person that worked at the credit union, it wasn't her daughter that took anything. It was her daughter's friend that took this information. The woman ended up getting fired, and all kinds of havoc was wreaked because of that. But you want to have a dedicated workspace, lock your computer, put your papers away, don't let them mix them in with anything else that's going on. And every business has a working shredder. So you think, okay, at work, if you have stuff that should be shredded, I tell this as part of my training, make sure you know where the shredders are and they're secure. But does everybody at home have a working shredder? They may have one that broke. Are they shredding the information that they should be shredding? So in summary, implement a privacy policy, confidentiality agreements saying that they'll keep things confidential, remote worker policy, cell phone use policy, use of company equipment policy, and a regular schedule of training on all these policies. When I go into a company, I'll say, I'll do some training with your employees for free when you offer our benefit, our legal and identity theft benefit to your employees. And some people go, no, we don't need that. I'm offering to do it for free, and they still don't want me to do it. They don't want to take people out of the job. It's like, okay, you got to balance smart business practices versus, it might cost you money to take people off the job, but it might save you a whole lot of money in the end. And Jeannine, you probably have helped people write some of these policies.
Yes,
recently.
definitely. Yeah, they all need to be revised at some level.
Yeah. So that's it for me. I'll stop sharing and go back to the.
Thanks, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
We saved the best for last.
Yeah, right. Now, Pat, we talked about talking about remote workers and the issues around that from the employer standpoint and career transitioning, but I'm thinking we can roll right into the remote worker one since Pat so nicely started to cover that topic. And thank you, Pat. That was very helpful. So there are different things that employers need to know related to managing remote workers. So let me get that up. We could share, right? Could share a screen.
Roscoe's got the controls, I think.
Do you see it?
Yeah. Well, yep.
Okay. So I'm keeping this up there just because they're bullets that I like to cover with my clients specifically. So the big thing is making sure that the employees are clear on expectations. The working from home isn't terribly different from when they're on the work site. You want to make sure that you've set up and you've had them set up a situation that they're really structured and ready to roll. Keeping in mind, most people aren't familiar with this. They haven't worked from home in the past. Managers haven't managed a remote workforce. So changing the style of leading others needs to come along with it. So in the past, when we used to have telecommuting types of policies, we used to be kind of strict with them in terms of the do's and don'ts. And what's happening now with what we're experiencing is that you need to be more flexible than not. You need to be less structured than you were. And so it's all about the flexibility and outcomes. They want people to manage just based on the performance and expectations of their people rather than hounding them every minute on what they're doing. Obviously, policies always need to be looked at. Any one that's out there needs to be adjusted at this point. And like most policies, they really need to be ready to be adjusted as necessary. But with this particular pandemic and the issues related, policies are changing right and left. And frankly, we're not going to do an overhaul with my clients for a while because there's just going to be too many changes. We just keep up kind of day to day, week to week. There are some things to focus on though. You, from now, or at this point, I'm sure most of them have done this and you've determined who can work from home. You don't want to start getting involved with the requirements of when they need to return to work. We really don't know when they're going to be able to, so we kind of have to keep that fluid. I know some people have wanted to tighten that up and say, well, they need to get back a certain time, and we really don't want to do that. We have to take each day as it comes, really, with this. Include a clause that remote work will be discontinued at will and at any time, because with some calls I've had, the employers saying, oh, now they think they can do this all the time. And I said, well, first, maybe you might want them to, because it could save you some office space and some other things. But on the other hand, you don't need to allow that just because they're doing it now and rather successfully. So we just like to keep that open to employees to know that this is going to be evaluated. Evaluate workers based on output and completion of objectives. Avoid assuming people aren't reliable, dependable, or responsible. What I find is that prior to this forcing people to work from home, a lot of employers didn't want to allow it because they felt that people were just going to be lazy and not be doing what they need to do. And what I've told them is if they're like that at home, they're probably like that at work. And chances are we do see those characteristics. So basically you want to trust your people. I mean, if you've been managing them well and you know they're good employees, if you give them what they need to do and the outlines and the expectations, they should just be able to get those done without somebody micromanaging. The important thing here too is to keep the communications flowing. People are feeling, and we all heard this constantly, feeling isolated. They need to be kept in the loop with their fellow and team members and their managers. They should do team meetings as well as one-to-one. Obviously, we want to use this video conferencing as much as possible. Let me see. How can I get down here? Why doesn't this allow me? Well, anyway, let me just go on to legal considerations. Basically, they're required to, actually the same legal considerations you have in the workplace apply, basically. They're not lax or relaxed because they're home. You need to be clear on their hours. They need to be tracking their hours, including meal periods. If you're having them work full days, the timesheets need to be in check, just like they would be in the workplace. Their employers are responsible for their workers' health and safety. So the old workers' compensation can pop in here, just as an employee would turn in any injury while they were working, they would do the same if they were home. They're reportable. And then technology and supplies, obviously we need to be sure that they get what they need. They're clear on what the equipment is that people do need. Prior, again, to this emergency, employers that I would work with that wanted to do at home, I would tell them to actually go do an assessment to be sure that they see the arrangement, make sure the ergonomics are in place, make sure technology is in place, and make sure all their supplies and equipment are working in order for them to reach the performance goals. And then tech support should be available to them. And then I won't get into what Pat already covered, but it's the importance of confidentiality, information security, business continuity policies. And so again, all these things need to be reiterated if necessary. They don't change just because somebody's at home. So I don't know, Pat, do you want me to talk a little bit about career transitioning?
Yes, please.
Okay. Basically, we're finding, and I get this, these calls actually in the last couple weeks more, obviously, because people are bored, they're frustrated, they're not sure if their job's going to be there. Some of them have already lost their jobs. Some business people don't know if they're going to be able to be in business. So it's kind of like, what do we do? What should we start thinking about? The first thing is they are thinking about it because that they need to. They need to start thinking about what else they might want to do. I do the coaching. So, I mean, obviously this is where that's coming from, in terms of people calling to say, what if I want a new track? What should I be thinking about? And I always tell people that they should identify areas that they're naturally strong in, focus on jobs that support their interests, strengths, and skills. The other thing that throws people off, but is very important, is to be open to a whole new career, a whole new line of business. If you didn't own a business, maybe you should, maybe that's a direction you should go in. Of course, Pat, that's where you could come in handy, I'm sure. But there's, I'm telling them you really need to clear the slate, clear your mind, and start thinking about different ways of moving forward. So what should one focus on when they're transitioning? Certainly, again, the transferable skills. They should look at the areas they're not naturally good at. So maybe some performance issues that they had, or they weren't at a level that they needed to be. They should start perfecting those, actually, even if it's just training here and there. Especially when they have all this time, they should be really focused on how to fill the gaps in their skills and experience. And again, seek training necessary. I do like to get people to think about a dream job, dream company they might want to work for. People laugh when I tell you this, but I'm in that. I really love what I do all day long. And ever since I went out on my own, I actually never feel like I'm working. So when you hear that saying, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, that's where I am now. I wasn't always there. I thought I loved my executive role in the past, and I did it for 18 years. But when I really started to realize I just didn't like it anymore, on paper it looked great, everything looked great. But when I started to sort of, self-coaching, assessing where I really need to be, it was more working independently and also pulling out the things that I loved doing in the HR and organizational development field, and just work a business that fits what I'm naturally good at and what I love to do. So I'm a living example of making a major transition to the point where I felt like I was going to an edge of a cliff and jumped, hoping there'd be a net. Because I didn't have to leave, I just wanted to. So it was even harder because I had, again, what looked like an ideal situation, but it wasn't working for me. So all I'm saying is that when you really do love something, it will work out. You just need to work at it. So even if people consider moving into a different part of the company they're with, something that they want to learn differently within the group that they're already with, they should mention that. There's that whole concept of job enrichment. With my clients, and when we do performance appraisals, I always tell them to have a section on that to really make sure the person's happy with what they're doing. And if not, trying to see how they can modify their current job to fit better with the person's skills. Be realistic but proactive. Be willing to start over. They have to really consider any education that they might need as well. I always like to tell people to volunteer in the area that they think they're interested in. Networking is definitely the way to go in terms of, again, just talking to people within the industry, talking to people who do what you want to do, whatever it might be. Focused on LinkedIn and other social media accounts to support what their focus is. And I do reiterate to people, be patient. It does take time, but they need to do their homework. They need to read up on the positions or industries they're seeking. And then they really should be actively moving forward and how they get that accomplished. And again, those that I work with are going through career coaching and that sort of thing. But whatever it is, people really need to just be open to the changes out there. There's always a lot of opportunities. And we also know there's a whole lot of companies hiring out there right now. So we hear gloom and doom, but no one's focusing on just all of them that are. And there's too long a list for me to even mention today. I was looking it up, and I was thinking I'd mention them, but the list is just endless. So there are a lot of job opportunities out there, certainly retail, food related, pharmacy related, healthcare related, transportation related. So, and honestly, lately, because Instacart's so bogged down, I think people, if they're unemployed, ought to just put their name out as, I'll shop for you. call me. I mean, that's been a huge need that I know I see on social media all the time, and I'm also experiencing difficulty getting these things delivered. So anyway, just being open to it and knowing that there might be something else, and it will likely be much better if it's something you're going to enjoy more. It's scary, but it's something to consider.
And I read that you can still get unemployment even if you start a business. I read that it won't make you ineligible if you start a business.
Yeah, well, you know, usually self-employed people are excluded from everything. So it's really nice to see that this has brought us all back. I'll tell you, initially, I didn't think I was going to be able to look at any of these benefits out there, but it is nice to see that there are some things and some relief in sight for those of us just hanging out there. So,
Well, my dream job, I'm afraid, might not be available. I always wanted to be saber-tooth.
Really?
Never say never.
Yeah, never say never.
Until I saw him coming down from the rafters, then I'd say, well, maybe not.
Well, now that it's out there, Pat, you might be getting a call. Who knows?
Okay, we have some questions. One of them has to do with, and I'll defer to Tom on these, but I think there's questions about whether you can double dip.
So let me read these questions 1 second.
And Dana had a question about sole proprietorships. And Dana, if you can unmute yourself. And
I did.
Did you find that website?
Yeah, it was a project just finding the website. And I must say, everyone knows I work at the Culinary Institute. This is for my father's tavern, Stadium Grill. It's not for me, but in any case, I'm helping him with all this stuff. So yeah, it was a project finding the website and then, you know, gathering all the ID information. It lists what you need before you go on. So we finally found the site and did that yesterday, but it's not readily available on the regular old unemployment website on the Department of Labor. So I just wanted to put that out there if anyone needs the website, so they're not searching like me and my father were for the past couple of days. But I applied for a grant through the Verizon grant that appeared last Friday. So we put in for that, but he's looking into, you know, other support. But he's like, well, if I put in for that, can I not get this? Or if I put in for this, can I not get that? So I don't know if anyone else has posed that question, or if anyone, you know, maybe it's too early to have an answer. But everyone right now needs all the support they can get.
I applied for both of those. It's the LISC or something, LIS.
Yes, he put in for that.
That and the one of them or both, and my husband does most of this, so forgive me because I'm not sure exactly how this goes, but one of them does ask if you've applied for anything else. I don't know. I honestly don't know, and I wondered myself how they would coordinate that with everybody jumping on this all at once.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the first one he put in for, but you know, there's other items out there, but he's like, it's just kind of a question mark. I don't know if anyone really has the answer quite yet.
I wonder myself. The other thing is that LISC grant, I think, is up. I think they're deciding like coming up this weekend or something. We'll see how that goes. But
he's an email. He said he'll know by April 14th.
Okay. Yeah, I was told like the week of the 11th or whatever that is. So it's the same.
Oh, great.
Same.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm on PPP and IDLE. You can do both, right?
You can do both. I'm just going to try and read these questions and cover them in order here. So, uncertain on how the programs apply specifically with us being self-employed and taking a draw. I don't know. I don't know. I know they say payroll counts, wages count, commissions count. So whether or not we can qualify a draw as one of those, I don't know.
But, sorry, we do have somebody that can address that, Nick, and I'll get you her contact.
Then we have a question about PPP impacts the amount of unemployment benefits. So is I assume the question is like, if you're self-employed and you want to collect unemployment, then can you also get a PPP? Is that the question?
That's exactly the question. Yes. What it's the same as the earlier question about what overlapping opportunities might there be just in transition, PPP, the list perhaps, what are the options and how do they interfere? And that sounds like it might still remain to be seen and decided.
Well, I mean, if you follow, you're a sole prop?
Yes.
Okay. Are you registered as a sole prop?
Yes, for the state of New York. That's right. But my work is international and very much national.
Uh-huh. So I think if that's the case, you can certainly try to apply for both.
Can I just jump at my daughter did, and she owns her own business or whatever, and she was denied immediately the unemployment.
Huh.
So I told her to go back to it though, because they were adding sole proprietors, and then they just all of a sudden just rejected her and one of her colleagues who's also a business owner, sole proprietor. So I'm not sure what to think of all of that.
So I'm in the comments, I'm putting the name of Angela Nowicki, who can help you calculate how much you can apply for if you're sole prop.
Thank you.
And you can, if there's three little dots in the top of the Zoom box, and you can copy those. You just click on it and copy it, and you'll be able to save all the questions. Other questions? Got a few more minutes. But sole props can apply for EIDL.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. The tricky part of the sole proprietorship application is figuring out how much to apply for, and this Angela Nowicki professes to be, or her co-worker professes her to be the wizard at it. I don't know if that's an official term, wizard, but he's a wizard.
Did you put that in there, Pat? I don't see it in the comments.
I'm just working on it.
Oh, okay.
It's anowicki@manageyyourbooks.com.
And the specialty is what? The EIDL?
No, the payroll protection program if you're a sole prop.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can absolutely apply for the Paycheck Protection Program as a sole proprietor.
Mm-hmm.
The bank is going to be looking for evidence that there's a sober, steady business with records, and certainly not accusing anyone on this call of anything, but the bank is, it's going to be like applying for a mortgage with the bank. And so they're going to want to know that there's a steady business record there.
There was an extensive list, a checklist for our bank. It was and then our accountant had to send certain things, and I mean, it's pretty involved, as it should be, I guess. I mean, they can't just, it's nothing you won't have, but it's a significant amount of information.
So I think Nick and a couple of people have asked the question about sole props, and maybe you don't use the word sole proprietors, but Angela, I think, is willing to help. Next week, we'll see. We'll hopefully have time back for more updates, if there are more updates. It seems to be ever changing. We're also going to talk about, we'll have somebody on that can talk about resources available for mental health. And I don't know about anybody else, but I think in another week I'm going to be ready for some mental health help. Not to make light of this, but I think that this is for maybe yourselves or your employees. At some point in time, there's going to be a lot of us that need help dealing with this situation. I mean, we're all home. We're not used to working at home unless you're Jeannine. and Pat works at home, but a lot of us are just out there all the time, and it gets to be old.
And you know, Pat, that's one of the reasons that, you know, everybody's having all these happy hours and even like the fun things to do with employees. They're, you know, like you'd go bowling together. They're starting to do things online with challenges, the exercise challenges, the walk challenges. There's a whole lot that you can just convert now. So I said, you know, just continue all those employee engagement kinds of things. It's very important to keep people connected. And again, just having those team meetings, one-to-one meetings, and then something fun, at least a couple times a month.
You're doing scavenger hunts. They'll send the list out, and then you have to go find an item and come back to the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just put my email in the chat box, and Jeannine, if you would as well. And if anybody has any suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover next week, the week after, please let us know. And we'll see you all in a week.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And spread the word about this. I think it's valuable information, and other people, we should have more people on this call. So I know there's a lot of them, these kinds of calls, but I think this is one that we're giving a lot of good information out. Tom is clearly the expert on this SBA stuff. He's really taken the time to research all the ins and outs of it, and I don't think a lot of us have the time to do that. So thank you.
And I wanted to say, Tom, I've been on a couple different legal types of sessions on the topic, and I got the most out of you. So thank you for all the work you're putting into it. I think they just give you enough, so you have to call them to get more, but I get that. But
that's the challenge. Is there are so many articles and so many webinars, and there are lists of resources, and
right.
Entrepreneurs, by definition, their time is scarce, and so I'm trying to save people.
No, you're doing a great job.
Frustration, frankly.
Thank you very much.
So here's hoping. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Everyone.